Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to day number 6 of our Goblin Test Week. So in the last 5 days we built characters for each of the numbered editions from 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons all the way to the current 5th edition. And today is going to be the first round of combat. So for today's video, we're going to be doing the standardized characters, the standard characters that we made. So these are going to be the ones that we created using the standard default method of character generation for each edition. So this will be like the 3d6 down the line for 1st and 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the 4d6 like drop the lowest for 3.5 and 5th edition, and our standard array for D&D 4th edition. Before I get into the actual tests, so what's going to happen is if you watch any of the bonus videos, you kind of got a sneak preview as to how these combats are going to go down. To start with the fighter and the goblin in melee contact with each other, and just determine initiative and begin the fight. Once a goblin is defeated, another one will move up, but it will start a new round. So characters that get 3 attacks, like for 2nd edition, my 3 attacks every 2 rounds, that would not happen. Like if they killed the goblin with the 1st attack, then they wouldn't get a 2nd one. Other than that, it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward, but before I start the actual combats, I thought I would give my official predictions. I'm only going to be showing one set of combats on video, so what I show on video may not be necessarily the way that the test overall goes. I'll be doing 10 sets of combats in total for each fighter for each edition. But I thought, like I said, I would just do my predictions, and my predictions changed a little bit from what I thought they would be when I first started before I was building the characters and looking at the monsters. So at first I thought it was going to be like basically more or less in order for like who's going to kill the least goblins to the most, with 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then 5th edition and 4th edition would potentially have the most defeated goblins. But really looking back and looking over the character creations and the goblin stats, I don't know if I necessarily feel that way anymore. So what I thought I would do is just kind of discuss which of the editions I think will have the fewest average goblins killed before the fighter is reduced to 0 hit points, all the way up to the one that I think will have the most. First, let's just show the miniatures that I'll be using for each edition. So this will be our fighter for 1st edition, our fighter for 2nd edition, our fighter for 3rd edition, our fighter for 4th edition, and finally, just because I was running out of male human fighters with the shield and sword, this is going to be our fighter for D&D 5th edition. So this is just the miniature to represent who's going to be there. So starting off with, so I'm going to basically make my predictions now before I do any of the actual test combats to see which one I think will go from the least to the highest. So starting off, I think the edition that's going to have the fighter that is able to kill the fewest amount of goblins before himself being defeated is going to be 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So the reason that I think that is with 1st edition AD&D, the characters have randomized hit points, so I would have to roll. I rolled the hit points for my 1st level character. Just looking at the sheet here, the initial roll that I got was actually 3 hit points. So I'm going to actually do 1 round of that with the 3 hit points, and just to see how it looks, I'll do that on camera because it probably won't last very long. But then I'll do the test proper with the result of 8 hit points. But it's still less than the D10 that they roll. In addition, they also only get a single attack each round, and initiative is rolled at the beginning of each and every round of combat. So unlike the more modern editions, starting from 3rd up, that does initiative only once and follows that pattern until the combat is over, in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, conditions on the battlefield would change, and they would represent that by having a new initiative each round. So the reason that I think that our 1st edition AD&D fighter is not going to fare too well is there's going to be likely several situations where the goblin is going to go probably at the end of one round and then win initiative on the next round to go first. So there's going to be opportunities for the goblins to attack the fighter essentially twice in a row over the course of 2 separate rounds. And that just, with the lowest hit point total for this test, again, I think it's something that's going to make it very difficult for them to really be necessarily competitive as far as this test goes. After that, so that's our first edition fighter, I think we'll have the least amount. After that, it's actually kind of tricky. I want to say, honestly, that I think the next character, the one that's going to have the lowest, the second lowest number of goblins killed before being defeated, I think might actually be the 4th edition character. And I know that the overall concept is that, 4th edition is a power gamer's version of the game, but in practice it just really didn't work that way. I mean, I had made a character for the D&D Essentials line, and it killed fewer goblins than my 2nd edition character that had horrible stats. So the reason for that is the standard goblin's going to have 29 hit points versus the 31 hit points that my fighter's going to have. So it's going to basically be hit more often by the goblins, and because of that, I genuinely think that it could probably be the 2nd lowest overall. After that, we're going to be looking at our 3rd edition fighter, and the 3rd edition fighter I think is going to do fairly well simply because it has one of the highest armor classes, being able to add its dexterity bonus. This is the 1st edition where it's kind of easy to get a dexterity bonus to armor class. So with a 15 dexterity, it's getting +2, whereas a 15 dexterity in 2nd edition only gave +1. And so we're looking at an 18 armor class, a decent attack bonus, and so I think that they're probably going to be the middle of the road options. After that, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but once again I'm going to go with 5th edition is going to be the runner-up. And the reason for that is a lot of the things that apply to the 3rd edition character are going to apply to the 5th edition character, but they do have the ability to use their second wind to heal themselves a little bit. Now, the fighter in 4th edition also has that option, but it's not, I don't think it's going to necessarily sway things enough. I mean, we're looking at 7 hit points that they're going to heal there versus the fighter in 5th edition is going to be rolling a d10 +1, so there's a chance they could heal almost all the way up to full if I roll good enough. So I think for that reason, and I think that reason is going to make it so that the 5th edition fighter is going to have a really decent chance of taking out the goblins. The goblins also have, I think, 7 hit points for the 5th edition, and our fighter is going to be attacking for a d8 +5, so on average, unless I roll the minimum on the d8, then our 5th edition fighter should be killing a goblin with every single successful hit. And that leaves us with the one that I think has the potential to do the most, and this is the one that kind of surprised me the most, and that is going to be our 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons fighter. The biggest reason for this comes from a little bit of a bias when I had run my suboptimal combat with the hero Tar Markvar, who had the minimum strength to be a fighter, no dexterity modifier, very, very low intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, and a constitution so low that it actually gave him a negative hit point. But despite that, he managed to kill more goblins than the 4th edition character that was designed to deal as much damage as possible. So from that perspective, having a 2nd edition fighter that has better stats has more of a chance to be successful. The other reason for this, and the other reason that I think that the 2nd edition may be able to do the most is, number one, the goblin is going to have random hit points each time one comes in. In AD&D you would roll hit points, which is going to happen with the 1st edition one as well. I just don't think that it's going to make as much of a difference. But with the 2nd edition one, rolling the hit points, rolling a d8 -1, minimum of 1, is going to make it potentially a lot easier to kill each individual goblin. Like I was getting, on average, in the test combat that I did with Tar Markvar, I was getting, on average, of 5 hit points per goblin. The other thing is that the 2nd edition fighter is going to have the most attacks potential the highest number of potential attacks of all the characters, because the second edition fighter is able to, just using the rules in the player's handbook, specialize in his longsword at first level, which gives him +1 to hit, an additional +2 to damage, and it also gives him 3 attacks every 2 rounds, which is something that I forgot to do with Tar, meaning that he probably could have killed, I'm going to say, at least 1 more goblin before he finally died. So with that in mind, having 3 attacks every 2 rounds, or every second round of combat, being able to do 2 swings maximizes the odds for me being able to kill a goblin. So that's my prediction, and I haven't done any of the combats yet. I wanted to record that before I did any of those. So at this point, let me know what you guys think is going to be the likely power level. So which character do you think is going to be able to defeat the fewest amount of goblins, all the way up to which one do you think is going to defeat the most? Now again, this is something that, you know, I could be absolutely horribly wrong on, because it's going to be averaged out over the course of 10 separate battles. But just based off of the character creation and looking at the monster stats, this is the way that I think it's going to go. So from lowest to highest, we got 1st edition, 4th edition, 3rd edition, 5th edition, and 2nd edition could be the upset winner here. So anyway, with that all said and done, what we're going to do is we're going to go right along and start the combats. Alright, so let's begin with our 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons first level fighter going up against the goblins to see how powerful he's going to end up being. Now, at first I was going to record these as the initial battles and then do all the rest later, but I'm getting sort of near the end of the week, so I ended up staying up late to do 9 of the 10 battles. So this will be the 10th and deciding one. I'm not going to go over all of the results until the end of the video, but there's just a few things I want to say about the 1st edition combat before I begin. Number 1 is initiative. Now, I've read over the section in the Dungeon Master's Guide a few times, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing this right, but this is a one-on-one combat, so there's only 2 combatants, and I really only need to determine which one gets the first swing each round. So, the way that it looks to me is, if there's no surprise, then you have both of your sides just roll a d6, and whoever gets the highest is said to have seized the initiative or won the initiative, so they would go first, is my understanding. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to be rolling a d6, and whichever one gets the highest of the 2, that will be the creature to go first. Now also, when I was running the 1st edition AD&D other combats, like the initial combats, the 9 that I did on the previous night, one of the things that I noticed was that the random nature of the goblins' hit points kind of played a bit of a factor in the 1st edition AD&D fighters' number of goblins killed. So I wanted to kind of do something about that. Just so I'm still going to do the random hit points in this video, but I'm also going to do a second set of battles with the goblins having a fixed hit point total of 4, just because that was tended to be the average of what I got. But when it comes to the AD&D characters, the AD&D battles, the goblins' hit points are determined by rolling a d8 and subtracting 1 with a minimum of 1 hit point. Which means that, statistically speaking, and this happened quite a few times actually, and with the 1st edition battles that I did, you're more likely to get a goblin with 1 hit point than with 7 hit points. So, because if you roll a 1 or a 2 on the d8, then those results are both treated as 1 hit point, whereas to get 7 hit points you have to roll an 8. So since you're only rolling an 8-sided die and 2 of the numbers can give you a goblin with 1 hit point, that is a 25% chance every time I roll hit points for a goblin that the goblin's only going to have a single hit point, meaning that it's guaranteed to get killed with a single attack. So we're going to start off with our goblin and with the random hit points against our 1st level fighter. So on the chart here, again, I don't want to show all the results yet, but I do have, if it'll focus any, so I do have the hit points. I did roll randomly for the first goblin already prior to hitting record. So it is going to start with 4 hit points, and I just wrote down the pertinent information that I need for the Goblin. For example, it has armor class of 6, its hit points are d8 minus 1, and it hits Athan if I roll a 16 or higher on the dice using the combat charts from the Dungeon Master Guide, with his armor class of 4. And on a hit, it does 1d6 damage. So, and then just up top, I've just got room for our initiatives. So let's zoom back out here. As far as Athan goes, so he is armor class 4, and he will hit the Goblin on a roll of a 14 or greater because he's got a because the Goblin has an armor class of 6, and he has 8 hit points. I do also want to do a combat situation where it's just with the 3 hit points. So why don't I actually do that one first and just see how many goblins I can actually kill with the 3 hit points. So for the dice, I'm going to be using these ones for Athan and these ones for the Goblin. Hopefully the numbers will show up decently on camera. So again, there's no surprise, and what happens is when a Goblin is defeated, another one will just move up on the Goblin's turn. They're considered to have been basically swarming within 5 feet. So later editions have something where they may be able to do more based on their movement. For the standard combat, it's just going to be kind of like a line where they just kind of step in and everybody kind of moves up. So, and now again, if anybody can clarify first edition AD&D initiative, for me, just because, I mean, I don't want to be doing this wrong. This, I think, works perfectly fine for the purposes of a single creature versus a single creature. But if there's any advice that you can give me on how the initiative system works for first edition, I'd be more than happy to receive that information. So, let's just start off with our initiative roll. So this is against our 3 hit point fighter. Alright, so our 3 hit point Athan is going to go first. So he was conscripted into the guard or the military for one of the nations that for the nation that he lives in. Yes, they go to war against a horde of goblins. So he doesn't really think he has much in the way of chances, but we'll have a look and see. So he rolled a 10 on the dice, which misses. So the snarling, ferocious goblin that stands in front of him swings back and gets a 16 on the dice, which is enough to hit. So we roll a d6, and if I get a 3, 4, 5, 5, or 6, then our first level conscripted Athan with 3 hit points is dead. And that's a 4. So there you go. So our 3 hit point fighter died to the first swing from the first goblin. So now that that's out of the way, let's go to the actual combat with our 8 hit point fighter against our 4 hit point goblin. So again, we will roll the initiative dice. So the d6s, the goblin's going to get to act first. So he will make his swing. So the goblin's just kind of thrust with a short sword. Our more competent Athan just easily, deflects it with his shield, and then takes his longsword and thrusts back at the goblin, but also misses. So next round, I guess I should be writing these initiative results down. Okay, so in the next round, both of them go on 5. So what this means is that the damage takes place simultaneously, so everything's happening at the same point in time. So it's possible, it's fully possible in this situation, well, I guess not for the goblin, because the goblin can only do up to 6 hit points, but it is possible that the 2 creatures could technically take each other out at the same time, and I have had that happen in the test combats. So in these situations I roll both the dice at the same time, just to simulate the fact that they're happening at the same time. And alright, we got a natural 20 for Athan. Now, I don't think there were any, I couldn't find any rules or information on critical hits easily in the first edition AD&D manual, so I don't think anything special happens on a natural 20. So I'm just gonna roll, whoops, that's the wrong dice. Oh wait, no, I need that for, there we go. So I'm just going to roll his normal damage against our 4 hit point goblin, and I rolled a 7, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So our first goblin is down. So the next goblin, everybody's going to just kind of move up here. And our next goblin's going to have 5 hit points. This one's a little bit tougher. So let's just say it's the big brother, the one that Ethan just killed. Roll initiative. They're both going simultaneously again. So on 6s. And this situation both miss. So they both just kind of go to swing, but they also try to dodge each other at the same time, meaning that nothing happens there. But Ethan was prepared for this and gets to swing back immediately. And he hits the goblin, so I rolled a 16 on the dice. But he only does 3 points of damage, so this goblin is still alive. And we'll get his chance to swing back. 5 on the dice, so again, the short sword just kind of hits the chainmail armor and doesn't go any further. Nice sturdy chain. Right, Ethan seizes the initiative again, but misses with his attack, and the goblin in turn also misses. So we've got the goblin's on 5, Ethan on 3, so the goblin just barely, misses Ethan as the shield deflects it away, but Ethan's unable to capitalize. Next round, both combatants are acting at the same time, and both hit each other. So here we go. So typically in modern D&D there's no such thing as ties. But back then these things happened at the same time. So even if Ethan manages to kill the goblin with the amount of damage that he does, which is more or less guaranteed because he only has 2 hit points left, the goblin's still going to get his attack. So as Ethan's sword is slashing down and cleaving the goblin, wide open, the goblin's thrust with his short sword and with his dying spasms just gets the blade in there. So damages. So 2, so Ethan just does enough to kill the goblin. So our second goblin is down. Let's put another one up there. However, the goblin was able to inflict 4 points of damage to Ethan in the process. So Ethan is now at half of his maximum hit points. So that one hit took half his hit points away. So another goblin smelling blood moves up and got the higher number, so seizing the initiative and going first, will swing or thrust, and again just batted away by the shield of Ethan, who's getting a little bit more defensive now, and as a result misses his attack. Next round. And I guess the one thing, I think I said this in an earlier video, but Advanced Dungeons & Dragons combat is, the rounds are 1 minute long, but even though I'm only getting 1 attack, it doesn't mean that it's only 1 swing of a sword in a 60-second period. What it means is that for most of the minute, each of the combatants is kind of like feinting or swinging, but it's being, easily blocked or deflected, or the blows just aren't getting a chance to connect. The one that you roll each round represents an opportunity to actually land a serious blow. And then whether you hit or miss depends on the defensive, how the results go, and if the armor class is too high, then it means that either the armor caught it, or the shield caught it, or they were able to dodge. So that's what that means. So Ethan will go, and he misses. So the goblin unfortunately doesn't get to capitalize, but it will get another free swing right away, and unfortunately misses that as well. Ethan does hit the new goblin, whose hit points I forgot to roll. So another 5 hit point goblin. And it takes 3 points of damage, so it is down to 2 as well. So next round. So Ethan, fully confident now that he's wounded the goblin, will swing again. Unfortunately, the goblin lured him in, and did not get to hit back though. So Ethan's sword slashed the goblin. The goblin moved out of the way, thrusted with his short sword, but Ethan was prepared for it and managed to get his shield up in time. Alright, Ethan will go again, so he gets the first opening, and he hits the goblin again, and this time knocks him down, so cleaves another goblin. Another one moves up. This one's going to have 7 hit points, so this is one of the toughest goblins yet. This is where they stop screwing around. So initiative, both are going to go at the same time. and Ethan manages to hit. However, the goblin is unable to reciprocate and takes 4 damage as a result, knocking him down to 3 hit points. So Ethan winning initiative again. Misses. The goblin, unfortunately, also is unable to connect. And this is one of the other things with first edition AD&D combat is the numbers needed to hit are pretty high. So next round is once again simultaneous. So both see an opening at the same time, hoping to land the killing blow on their opponent. So Ethan misses. However, the goblin is able to sink his short sword into Ethan's side and does enough to bring him down. So this boss goblin takes his longsword, thrusts it into Ethan's, the gap in his armor from the previous hit, and manages to finish the job. So Ethan goes down in pain. So he managed to kill 3 goblins. We have 3 dead bodies here. And so that's what we got for our 10th combat for the random hit point goblins. So now what I'm going to do is we're just going to kind of reset everything. We're going to put Ethan back to 8 hit points. And now all of our goblins are going to have just a fixed amount of 4 hit points. Now in this case it's not going to make a huge difference because I didn't actually roll anything lower, but since I already did the other 9 battles with the 4 hit point goblins, I really feel like I should do that again. So in this case, I don't want to get too descriptive with everything just because it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. So with this one, I just kind of want to try to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. So we are just going to go down here, just do another Ethan and the Goblins, which actually sounds like the name of a band. Alright, so Ethan 6, Goblin 3. He hits. And so, whoops, we'll put Ethan back up. So our first Goblin is defeated right off the bat. So the next one moves in on their initiative turn, because I believe they went after anyway. So the next one just moves up and takes a swing and misses. Next round, Ethan seizes the initiative again and only does 2 points to this goblin. So the second goblin manages to survive the attack and just misses, like just misses. Alright, so far Ethan's been doing pretty good with the initiative though. He's won the initiative every round. Can't capitalize, however, and this time the goblin is going to hit him. So this time the goblin does stab him with a short sword for 5 damage, bringing him down to 3 hit points. Next round is simultaneous. And both hit each other. So this is the situation. So both attacks are taking place at the same time. So you've got Ethan swinging with his long sword and the goblin thrusting with his short sword, and they're both going to connect at the same time. The question is, are they going to do enough damage to kill each other? So the goblin needs to roll a 3 or higher, and Ethan just needs to roll a 2 or higher. And there you go. So Ethan managed to kill the second goblin, but it took him down at the same time. So that was 2 goblins killed for our first edition AD&D characters. So that was our 10th combat for each. And of course our poor 3 hit point fighter didn't even get a single goblin. Again, I'm going to save the results for the end of the video, but that was our first edition combat. So I'm just going to reset everything here and we're going to go on to our second edition fighter. Alright, so here we have our second edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons character. Again, I just want to thank the people who helped me with the comments in these videos, because they did catch a few mistakes that I ended up making, and I'm sure I already mentioned this before, but I'm just going to recap the mistakes that I had made with my second edition character. So I've got it filled in, and I just wrote second edition on there so I could know easily which sheet this was. So the first thing was, in the video I forgot to apply the defense adjustment for my dexterity to my armor class. So it drops my armor class from 4 down to 3, so that makes that even better. And the other mistake that I made came in the form of the specialization. So I had said that I was going to be specialized because as second edition characters, if you were using the proficiencies, they had the ability to do that, second level fighters. So I had the attacks right, of 3 every 2, but I completely neglected the fact that specializing gave you a +1 bonus to hit and +2 bonus to damage. So with that, I just had zeros here before, or 0 and +1. So I changed that and I fixed that, so I now get an attack modifier +1 and a damage adjustment of +3. So that lowers my weapon THAC0 from 20 down to 19. And my longsword now does 1d8 +3. So we're still in this situation. I didn't find that the random hit points hurt as much, just because I'm doing a minimum of 4 damage with this fighter, and on average I'm going to be doing 6 or 7 points. So if I roll a 3 or a 4 on the 8-sided die. So I'm only doing this against the random hit pointed goblins instead of the 4 hit point ones, because again, the 4 hit point versus anything 1, 2, 3, or 4 is going to be killed in a single hit anyway, so it's not worth splitting the hairs over. Other than that, the other thing that I had forgotten to do was to note the attacks for every second round. So what I've got here on my initiative chart is I've got Athan the Goblin, and then up top here I've got attack, or Athan attack per round. So this is just, so round 1, so this round would be just 1 attack, and then 2 attacks, 1 attack, 2 attack, 1 attacks, 2 attacks, and so on and so forth. And if I need to, I can just erase the column. Now, the way that the 2 attacks every other round goes, so the way that 3 every 2 works, is you get your first attack during your normal initiative order, whether it's first or second or whatever. So let's just say Athan wins the initiative round. So he'll get his first attack on his normal initiative, then the Goblin will get to go. So the Goblin will get their action, and then at the end of the round, that's when the extra attacks occur. So I know we house ruled it back in the day that it would be you just got the attacks at the same time, but as the rules are actually specified, the bonus attacks, the secondary attacks for your specialization occur at the end of the round and not at the same time as your normal attack. So it means that the Goblin's still going to get a chance to go. So here we are. Now, we did have a 2nd edition test with our, what we consider to be our hopeless character, and that was, of course, the legendary Tar Markvar, who on a single combat managed to kill 6 goblins with his measly strength and health and everything else. And so it's been interesting to see how this other more standardized fighter does with his 9 hit points and armor class of 3. So similar to what I had done before, I do have my goblin stats. I'm not going to bother showing them, but it's armor class 6, which is the same as first edition. Hit points are a d8 minus 1. And in this case, they hit Athan on a roll of 17 or greater because of the fact that this is that he has an armor class of 3 and their THAC0 is 20. So their THAC0 of 20, subtract the armor class of 3, means that I need to roll a 17 or higher. So there's only a 20% chance, so 17, 18, 19, or 20. So there's only a 20% chance each roll that they're going to even be able to hit Athan. They're using a short sword with a speed factor of 3, so the initiative in 2nd edition that I'm using is the roll a d10 and add your speed factors or your casting time if you were casting spells, and the lowest goes first. So Athan's longsword has a speed factor of 5. The Goblin also does 1d6 damage on a successful hit. So, again, we've got our Athan and Goblin dice, and we got our Athan and Goblin initiative dice, Goblin hit points, Goblin damage, and Athan's damage. So let's just separate all these. Alright, so let's start off with our Goblin hit points. I forgot to roll that ahead of time. So we've got a Goblin with just a single hit point. So this probably won't take long, but again, odds are even if they had the max hit points, they're probably going to get killed in a single hit anyway. Or there's a very strong possibility. So we're going to go to our initiatives next. Alright, so Athan rolled an 8. The Goblin rolled a 5. We add +3 for the Goblin short sword, so that gives us 8 total. And +5 to Athan's 8, which gives him a 13. So the Goblin's going to get to go first. And we'll see what happens. So the Goblin actually rolled a 19. So first swing, the Goblin, looking at this, hulking fighter and chainmail and surprisingly agile for somebody, his size, great big body shield. And the Goblin actually managed to get his short sword kind of underneath the shield and stabbed at our 9 hit point Ethan for... Ow, that is actually a really nasty hit. So he did maximum damage. So Ethan is down to 3 hit points already. So that is rough. But Ethan's attack now. So Ethan's weapon THAC0 is 19. The Goblin has an armor class of 6. I rolled a 12, so I just missed. So the Goblin just kind of barely dodged out of the way as this occurred. Second round. So Ethan goes on a 14, and the Goblin goes on a 13. So the Goblin's going to make his attack. Rolled a 3, so that's not going to happen. So Ethan, so this is a round where he gets 2 attacks. So the first one will be on his initiative turn. And that is going to connect, so I'm not even going to bother. That is a Goblin down. And so our next one moves up. Now, I'm not going to do the second attack just because the Goblin's already been defeated, so we're going to go to the next initiative because the Goblin's already gone, but this one's going to have 3 hit points. So they're both tied for hit points now. Rolling initiative. So here we go. So Ethan goes on a 9 with his longsword, and the Goblin, a little bit concerned about, going after this guy, hesitates and goes on an initiative of 11. So even though he's got the quicker weapon, he's just not really excited about the prospect of attacking this guy. So Ethan gets to go first. And unfortunately he misses. The Goblin likewise misses. So the next round comes. Ethan's going to go on 7. And the Goblin's going to go on 6. So the Goblin's going to go first, but will miss. So Ethan once again getting 2 attacks. So on his regular initiative order, his first attack misses. His second attack, however, will connect. So that's 3 hit points. He does a minimum of 4, so that is a second Goblin down. Just move another one up there. Next round, Ethan goes on 10, the Goblin goes on 4. And our Goblin actually manages to stick him again, so this could be it. This could be a fatal attack. However, he only does a single point of damage, so Ethan is reduced to 2. And we'll get his chance at retaliation now. Rolled an 18 on the dice, and I forgot to roll the Goblin's hit points. Let's do that right now. So the Goblin only has 2 hit points, so that's another one killed immediately, automatically from a hit. So this one has 5 hit points. So I rolled a 6 on the d8. And this is a 2 attack round for Ethan, who goes on 14. The Goblin goes on 10. So hopefully the Goblin will be able to kill Ethan before he gets both of his swings. Rolled a 2 though, so definitely not going to happen. Ethan misses with the first attack and hits with his second attack. So I rolled a 19. So in this situation, I'm not guaranteed to actually kill the Goblin. If I roll a 1, the Goblin's taking 4 and will have 1 hit point left. But I rolled a 3, dealing 6 damage total. So that is another Goblin down. So we're doing pretty good considering that he took, I think it was on the first round, he took 6 points of damage. So here we go, new round, new Goblin. The Goblin goes on 7, Ethan goes on 11. So is this Goblin going to be the hero? 14 on the dice will miss. Ethan in retaliation also misses, so next round. Goblin goes on 11, Ethan goes on 15, so another chance at redemption to become a hero for his people. Unfortunately, just whiffs it, and Ethan's going to get 2 attacks now. So the first attack will hit. And did I forget to roll hit points again? I did. So another 5 hit point Goblin. So that's good because I got a 5 written down here anyway. So once again, not guaranteed to kill immediately. But I rolled a 6, so 9 damage, so there goes another Goblin. Next one's going to move up. Going to our initiatives. So this is... Okay. So here we go. We've got another simultaneous combat situation. So our Goblin goes on an 8 initiative. And our fighter, Ethan, goes on 8 as well. So these are going to happen simultaneously. It's only a 1 attack round for Ethan, but we'll see what happens here. So this could be some mutually assured destruction. And let's get the goblin hit points in there. So that's only 1 hit point on the goblin. Both missed each other, however. And on the next round, the goblin's going to go on 4. Ethan's going to go on 7. So the goblin will miss. Ethan gets 2 attacks and misses on both of them. Next round, goblin goes on 6. Ethan goes on 9. Whoops. So the goblin rolled a 16, which just misses, and Ethan missed as well. So we're going to go to a 2 attack round now. Goblin goes on 5. Ethan on way on 15, so he's going way late. Goblin misses. And Ethan connects. This one only had 2 hit points. Or 1 hit point, I think. So down he goes. Another goblin's going to move up. And I'm just going to go back and just erase these numbers so I can start over. So this one's actually lasted longer than I thought, considering how much damage Ethan took right off the bat there. So, another goblin's going to move in, goes on... They're going simultaneously again, so both on 8. The goblin has 5 hit points. So Ethan hits, the goblin misses, and Ethan does enough to kill him, just enough actually to drop the goblin down to 0. So we're starting to run out of goblin minis here. Alright, and Ethan's going to go on 6, the goblin's going to go on 11. So this is a situation, it's a 2-round combat, or two attack round. Ethan won the initiative, so he gets his first attack, which will miss. The goblin will then get their action, which hits. So there's a chance, because they're not going at the same time and the secondary attacks happen at the end of the round, there is a chance now that this goblin is going to kill Ethan before he gets his second attack. So Ethan only has 2 hit points left. The goblin's rolling a d6, so as long as I roll anything but this number here, then Ethan is defeated. Of course. Of course. Down to 1 hit point. So, he didn't get to kill Ethan. Ethan does get his second attack off, but misses. Next round, both rolled 7, so the goblin goes on 10, goes on 12. So the goblin really needs to finish this off. However, Ethan hits him, so it's a 5 hit point goblin, and down it goes. And this is why I was concerned about the 2nd edition fighter being one of the actually more powerful, because the armor class is one of the highest of all the characters. It's adjusted by 7 points instead of the normal 6 that the others have been done, and it gets more attacks than anybody else. So another goblin's going to move up, and we're going to get a new round. This is a 2 attack round. Goblin goes on 9, 12 for Ethan. Goblin misses. Ethan misses with his first attack, and his follow-up attack will hit. The goblin has 5 hit points. Oh, and Ethan only does 4 points of damage, so I ended up finally rolling a 1. So this goblin is still alive going into the next round. Both rolled 10s, 15 and 13, so this goblin really, again, needs to finish this off. Misses, however. And Ethan hits. It's an automatic kill because it only has 1 hit point left. So another goblin down. Going into a 2 attack round here now. Both of them are going at the same time again. So this is simultaneous. Natural 20 for Ethan and a 19 on the dice for the goblin. So they're both hitting each other at the same time. The goblin has 7 hit points, so this one is going to be a beast of a goblin. So they both hit each other at the same time. Now Ethan is dead. He's not going to get his second attack off. He is dead because he only has 1 hit point left. I can't roll less than a 1 on the d6. It's not a d6 -1, thankfully. But we'll roll damage anyway for both. So Athan can kill this one last goblin if he rolls a 4 or greater on the d8. And there you go, 4 on the d8. Whoop. 4 on the d8, and the goblin rolls 2 with a short sword, so they both manage to simultaneously take each other out. So that was pretty epic. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So our second edition fighter with 9 hit points, taking 6 damage on the first hit, killed 10 goblins. Now, I don't want to go too much into spoilers, but that's not actually the highest number of goblins that he killed. So that was our second edition fight, and let's move right on immediately into our third edition battle.